Wow. Good evening, everyone. For those very few that I've not had the chance to meet, my name's John Highbush. I have the honor of being the executive director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Thank you for coming this evening. In honor of our men and women in uniform who defend and protect our freedoms around the world, if you would please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Before we get started, there are a few special, well, everyone here is special, but let me point out a few particularly special people with us this evening. And I'd like to start with, from our Board of Trustees of the Reagan Foundation, Governor Pete Wilson and his wife, Gail. Governor. This fellow, some of you might recognize, along with his lovely wife, former Congressman Elton Galgley and his wife, Janice. All right, Gary, strap yourself in. Our special guest tonight is someone that I am quite proud to call a very good friend. We've known each other for years. We've often met on Sunday mornings for breakfast. He on his way to church, me on my way to a sports bar or a betting lounge. Now, I have to tell you, it's a humbling experience when we get together. We sit across the breakfast table from each other, so waitresses ask for his autograph before they take our order. Perfect strangers come up to take a selfie with him. I remember once pushing my eggs around on a plate when an attractive young woman approached our table. "Mr. Sinise," she said. Now, this is true. She first looked at him, and then she looked over at me. I could tell she was impressed by the two of us. "Mr. Sinise, you are one of the most handsome men I have ever seen." Gary said something typical of Gary, like, "Okay, I know you. Thank you. You're way too kind." I puffed out my chest. I was awaiting a similar compliment. "No, really," she said. "Mr. Sinise, you are so handsome." So I shrunk about 2 feet into my chair, and I remember saying, "What am I, chopped liver?" It didn't matter. As she flitted off, I was reminded one more time that it was my friend Gary, not me, who was the famous movie star. But that's the thing about Gary. Indeed, he has millions of adoring fans that know him from his various starring roles. Forrest Gump, from Lieutenant Dan, from Apollo 13, from Truman, of Mice and Men, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on Broadway, CSI New York, of course, and many, many other hits. But to know Gary, to really know Gary, is to also know that the fans who count most in his life, beyond his wonderful family, are the millions for whom he is a fan, a relentless, avid fan. The millions that Gary adores are the men and women in our armed forces who fight to protect our freedoms and liberty every single day. It's their families who make the ultimate sacrifice of losing a loving son or daughter, father or mother, or a brother or sister who might be seriously wounded in combat. It's also our magnificent police, firefighters, first responders, and every community in America who put their lives on the line to protect us day and night. For many years, and to this very evening, Gary has been their #1 fan. What a story this is. It's such an American story. Boy from small town in Illinois makes good. Boy becomes famous movie star. Boy gratefully dedicates his life to his country, making it stronger. Does this story sound familiar? It's Ronald Reagan's story. Is it not? And just like our 40th president, that's Gary Sinise's story too. What a wonderful, star-crossed coincidence. In just a moment, I'll be inviting Gary to join me on stage for a conversation about his new autobiography, which quickly became a New York Times bestseller as soon as it was released. I'm going to show you some photographs that I think will entertain you and also give Gary the chance to talk about his book and take a walk with me down memory lane. But before I do, I want to let the more than 1,000 of Gary's closest friends gathered here tonight in on a secret. It really is a secret, one known to Gary and me, but very, very few others. Mrs. Reagan, God bless her, is no longer with us, but I don't think she would mind me letting you in on it. Let me take you back just a few years ago when Gary was invited to speak here at her invitation. 3 of us, Mrs. Reagan, Gary, and me, were in a holding room just before Gary went on stage. "I've been giving some thought to something, Gary," Mrs. Reagan said. "Something I'd really like you to do." Gary edged forth in his seat. He dearly admired Mrs. Reagan, and I could tell he was eager to please. "What is it, Mrs. Reagan?" Gary said. "Anything." "Okay," she said. "I'd like for you to run for the United States Senate here in California." Gary says. His eyes has grown as big as saucers. He is rarely at a loss for words. I am grinning from ear to ear. I have never, ever been in a room when someone has turned Mrs. Reagan down on an important request. Gary says. Then, like someone throwing him a life raft, the door to the room swings open and we are informed we're late for going on stage. If you want to know how to define the word relieved, all one needed to do was go to Webster's that night and look the word up, and there's Gary's face, like right there. I love this guy like a brother. He is the most generous, decent, and patriotic man I know. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Reagan Library, Mr. Gary Sinise.
I forgot about that. I had forgotten about that. No, yeah, thank God the door opened. That's all I had.
Gary, as I was saying, I'd like to roll this conversation forward by showing you a number of really great photographs and have you just give us a comment or two on what you see. It really is kind of a terrific retrospective. A number of these photos you can find in the thick of Gary's book, but they tell a wonderful story, so I thought I'd bring a few out this evening, if you don't mind.
Sure, bud.
Okay, here we go. Now, who are these little, these little troublemakers? Gary, here's the photo right here too, so you don't have to crane your neck around. But I think I recognize which one is you. Who would that be?
Yeah, the one in the penny loafers and white socks there in the middle. That's me. So this is my dad took this picture, I think, and this is in the backyard of our house in Highland Park, Illinois, when I was in 6th grade. I got a guitar, my first guitar in 4th grade, and I started playing guitar. And that's my little band there in the backyard, you know, entertaining the neighborhood. It's packed. Packed. The yard was filled with people.
Is it fair to say that what got you into the arts and entertainment business, okay, so it all started with music? Is that?
Yeah, so this is the 60s, so I was a big Beach Boys fan in the 60s. Yeah, I remember fighting with, like in 4th grade, fighting with kids in 4th grade who had Meet the Beatles. I don't know, for you old-timers out there that remember this. He had Meet the Beatles, and then there was this Beach Boys live record, and we were like having a duke out as to which band was better, the Beach Boys or the Beatles. And I was a big Beach Boys fan. They inspired me. There's actually a shirt. I have a picture of my first guitar, and there's a Beach Boys record that has they have these striped shirts on. And you remember, it's a Beach Boys live record. I think they were live in Sacramento or somewhere. And they were wearing these striped shirts, and there's a picture of me playing my guitar in 4th grade with a striped shirt, just like that. I love the Beach. Oh dear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now, I remember I saw this movie. I don't remember you in it. So what is this? What's this?
That is a program from the first play that I was ever in high school, and it was West Side Story. And I tell this is an important moment in the book for me because it changed my entire life. I struggled as a student from an early age. I just struggled and was having some trouble, and this was this late 60s and this early 70s. So what I could remember, I put into the book from that period. and it's actually very detailed because this moment was so important to me. I was struggling. I was standing in a hallway with some of my rock band members as a sophomore in high school, and you know, I could have nearly been kicked out of school. It was that bad. And this drama teacher walked by, this kind of powerhouse little lady, and she walked by and she looked at us and turned around and said, "Do you know West Side Story?" And I said, "You mean about the two gangs that are kind of fighting and stuff like that?" She says, "Yeah, you look perfect for the gang members, so come and audition for the play." And then she blew off down the hall, and that was it. And, you know, I laughed, and, you know, theater kids, you know, I didn't think much of that. But I went and saw the pretty girls going into the audition, and I followed them in. And they gave me a script, and I didn't know what to do, and I just started stumbling around. I was making jokes, and everybody's laughing, and she thought I was amusing. She gave me a little part in the play. And I fell in love with theater, and it completely changed everything that I was doing at the time. And life went in a different direction. It spun into a different direction. All of a sudden, I wanted to go to school now because I wanted to be in all the plays, and I wanted to take all the theater classes. And there's a moving story in the book that I recall about that because it was such a pivotal, important, critically important time in my life.
Now let's fast forward, I don't know, roughly 5 years from that moment. I thought Steppenwolf was a band. I mean, I don't know, what is this?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I loved doing theater so much in high school, I just wanted to keep doing it. And so I didn't go to college. And high school was hard enough. I just couldn't. But I loved the theater department stuff. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, got some kids together and we started a little theater company. We found a little church. My parents knew the architects of a local church, and it had a kind of a big open space in there. And I asked my parents asked the architects if they would ask the church if they would let us do a play in there, and they gave us a key and said yes. You just lock up when you go, you know. And so we were able to go in there. I got a job during the day. I had graduated from high school. The other kids were still in high school. I worked during the day, and when they got us out of school, we went to the church and rehearsed the play. And I was 18 years old. We called it Steppenwolf because somebody happened to be reading that book called Steppenwolf and we needed to put something on the program, so we said, let's do that, and we put it on there. And this is actually a sign in front of a closed-down Catholic school that we were able to, there was a big basement in this Catholic school, and it was open, and I went to the priest and said, could we use that basement to put on plays in there? And he said, sure. So he gave it to us for $1 a year as a write-off, and we went in there and built an 88-seat theater. We had, my buddy Jeff Perry, who went to high school with me and was in the production of West Side Story, he went off to Illinois State University. He met John Malkovich, Laurie Metcalf, he met my future wife, Moira, many other great folks there, some of the early company members there. We started in the basement. We eventually moved into the city, this is 1980, with an expanded company. That's Malkovich up on the top, Glenn Headley right next to him, Jeff Perry off to the right by the tracks. That's Laurie Metcalf down on the bottom there. John Mahoney, remember John Mahoney? Fraser's dad. He passed away last year. That's him in the back there, right next to Joan Allen in the white shirt. Joan Allen nominated for 3 Oscars. And just a great group of people. That's Moira right behind me. I'm the guy in the white shirt with all the crazy hair and the glasses there. So this is a production of a Sam Shepard play called True West. I write about this very specifically in the book because it was the first production that Steppenwolf moved from Chicago. We had now moved into the city of Chicago. That Catholic school basement was in a suburb that I grew up in, Highland Park, and now we're in the city of Chicago. And I directed this play called True West by Sam Shepard. And in 1982, we secured the rights for New York. And it was nobody knew who we were. Nobody had a clue. We were able to get some money together from some producers in New York. And we took the show to New York, downtown, at a small theater in New York called the Cherry Lane. It's about 180 seats. The play opened. It got rave reviews. New York Times raved about it, and all the other critics did. And they especially went nuts for my buddy John there, who was playing this crazy dude. And it's a very dynamic role, very wild performance and everything. It's about these 2 brothers. I directed the play, was in it in New York as well. And then John, 6 months later when we closed, I kept directing different casts in the play and kept it running for a while. I was getting a little money as a director royalty, so I wanted it to keep going because I made $200 a week, and that was big. And then John went off and did his first movie called The Killing Fields. And that started his career. At one point, we were all in the basement together, just doing things. We worked jobs during the day. I worked on a loading dock at Neiman Marcus, unpacking boxes. Malkovich had a job as a school bus driver. I hope those children are all right. I hope they grew up all right. Yeah.
All right. This next one, this next photo, I don't know if you understood how important it would be to your life as it became, but comment on this particular play.
So when I met, and I write about a lot of this in the book, because these are important things. And I take the time to examine them because it's part of the journey from self to service, and it's the self to service is the self-focus on my acting career and building that and building my theater company and what I was doing as an actor to this broader service life. And this is an important moment because when I met Moira, who we met in 75, 76, we got married in 1981. And when I met her, she introduced me to her two brothers who had served in Vietnam. She introduced me to her sister who had served in the Army after college and married a Vietnam veteran who served as a combat medic in Vietnam. And getting to know them really was an education. And it really opened my eyes. And you know, when I was a kid in 1970, I was in high school in 1973. That was the end of combat operations in Vietnam. I remember my parents were always scared that war was going to go on. I was going to get drafted. But you know, during my high school years when Vietnam was raging, I was focused on those girls going into the audition or playing music or doing the plays, and yet the casualty reports were on television all the time, and it was going right by me. And then I got to know Moira's brothers, talking to them about their service in Vietnam, what it was like for them to go to Vietnam, what it was like for them to come home from Vietnam. And I started to kind of come out of the ether a little bit and realize that I had been kind of oblivious during that period of time. And I felt sad, and I felt embarrassed. I felt like I felt kind of shameful. And so I thought, you know, at that time, late 70s, early 80s, our Vietnam veterans, we didn't have the wall yet. We hadn't really made amends to our Vietnam veterans at that point. Yet I wanted to try to do something to help our Vietnam veterans. So as an artist, as a theater director, now I was the artistic director of Steppenwolf. I'm running the company. I decide what plays we're going to do. I'm directing plays now, and I thought I want to find a play that focuses on the Vietnam experience and tells the stories of Vietnam veterans. So I'm always on the lookout for plays. I'm reading magazines from different cities to try and find out what they're doing in those cities. And I read something from Los Angeles called the Drama Log. And it said there was a play written by Vietnam veterans being performed on stage at the Odyssey Theater here in Los Angeles. This is 1980. And it was written by a group of Vietnam veterans, and they were all performing the play on stage. Only 2 of them had ever acted before. The rest of them were just veterans who came together to kind of workshop their experiences and write a play about it, and now they were performing it. And so I flew out here to see it from Chicago, and I was so moved by it. I went back the next night. It was so powerful. And I begged the guys to let me do it in Chicago. And at first they said no. It should only be performed by veterans. And then it closed in Los Angeles, And nothing was happening to it. And I kept bugging them about it. And finally, they gave me the rights to do it. It was a play called Tracers. Two of my cast members here were actual Vietnam veterans, but the rest were not. Yet, each night, the theater was filled with veterans. We made one of the performances each week a special night free for veterans. And it started to turn into this cathartic sort of healing experience for local veterans in Chicago, where they were just coming out of the shadows and showing up at the theater. And so we created something at Steppenwolf called our Vets Night, and we've been doing it ever since 1984 when this play came, and every single play that we do at Steppenwolf for the past 35 years, we have a free night for veterans. And now my foundation, the Gary Sinise Foundation, is a sponsor of that night, and we provide a free meal for the veterans that come. And it all started right here, and these were early seeds that were planted years ago that manifested into a broader service mission later on.
Yeah. In a related area, but well, let's put it here. This is Tom Hanks or something, is that right? No, it's not.
Brad Pitt.
I do recognize this guy.
Yeah, so in the 90s, here I am in the 80s. I'm focused on local Vietnam veterans in Chicago, trying to help them in various ways, support them through different projects and different things that we were doing, continuing to speak to the Vietnam veterans in my own family. And along came 1993 and the opportunity to audition for this movie after we had moved to California. I had done Of Mice and Men as a film, and I think Of Mice and Men got the attention of the producers, and they invited me to come and audition for Lieutenant Dan. I read it, and when I read it, it was a Vietnam veteran, and I just wanted to do it so badly, and I went in, auditioned for it. I tell some funny stories in there about the audition. I auditioned one time and then didn't hear anything for like 3 weeks. And I thought they were going to Bruce Willis or something. I don't somebody, Brad Pitt maybe. And so I went on and auditioned for other things. I auditioned for a movie called Little Buddha. I was this close to getting Little Buddha. And I auditioned for Wyatt Earp, the Kevin Costner movie. I actually screen tested for Little Buddha and to play the father in the film. It was directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. So it was, I'm thinking, well, I didn't get Forrest Gump. I hope I get this. And then Costner's movie, I was close to that one. Thankfully, I didn't get either of those. I may have taken them because Forrest Gump came along, and they came back and said, my agents and manager called me, said, it looks like you might get this part. And boy, was I thankful, because Forrest Gump was a massive hit, and Little Buddha, nobody saw that.
Well, I think you were nominated for an Academy Award for this, weren't you? Yeah, you wouldn't say that, would you? But you were. Yep. I recognize this president. I think I recall, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you told me once this might have been your favorite role. Is that right? Or
it was certainly one of my favorite roles. It was one of the most challenging, for sure. That's like a, can you see that? I mean, that's like a full plastic face. The makeup took 4.5 hours to put on me every morning. I would lay in a chair, in like a dentist chair or some sort of lounge chair. And they had a reflexologist come in and rub my feet while I laid there. So I laid there with somebody rubbing my feet for 4 hours while they applied this silicone gel onto my face to transform me into Harry Truman. But it was based on the David McCullough book about Truman, which is such a glorious book, beautiful biography. And you know, it won a bunch of awards, and you know, it did really well. And I remember going to the Oscars for Lieutenant Dan while I was getting ready to play this part, and like the day after the Oscars were over, I was on an airplane to Kansas City to start shooting that movie. It was a good one to work on, really, really good one.
We're going to get to some more serious photos in a minute, but I just wanted to, what is this?
So anybody have any idea what that is?
Yeah.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, yeah. So I played McMurphy, the Nicholson part in that, and I tell some stories about Cuckoo's Nest in there because I just fell in love with it. I saw it as a kid on stage first, then they made the movie of it. I was at the world premiere of the movie with Nicholson and all the cast members there and everything. It was at the Chicago Film Festival that year. I was just a huge fan of it, and always loved it. And me and my buddy Terry Kinney, who's one of the co-founders of Steppenwolf and a great director, we decided to do it. We did it in Chicago. It was a big hit there. We moved it to London. It was a big hit there, and then we moved it to Broadway, and it won the best revival that year. And it was fun to be crazy there.
It was. Now, this next moment is probably one of the more formative moments of your life.
So this is, there's a chapter in my book called Turning Point. And it's the September 11th chapter. And there was truly a turning point towards service at that point after that terrible day. And this is, I know everyone can remember, President Bush called for a national day of prayer on the Friday after the Tuesday of September 11th. Churches, houses of worship, every place in the country were packed and filled, people just looking for some sort of comfort. I was standing up on the side of the wall at our little church, and it was filled to the gills. And that was earlier in the day. This is Friday night, and there were candlelight vigils everywhere, right? They were lighting candles, and all kinds of things were happening all over the country. And this is the candlelight vigil in I lived in Malibu. That's my wife there under the flag, and my daughter in the purple, Ella. And I remember just everybody from the neighborhood started to walk toward the corner, and there were candles lit, and I started to walk there, and then I ran back, and I grabbed that flag out of we had a little flag holder, and I took it down to the corner. And at one point, everyone started to turn to the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And everybody was singing God Bless America, and just America the Beautiful, whatever. It was beautiful. People just needed each other. And so I raised the flag up, and somebody snapped that picture. And I put that picture in my book because the Turning Point chapter is a big part of moving into the service work.
Now, if this were 1945, we'd be staring at Bob Hope. But that's not. That's Gary Sinise, isn't it? Right?
Yes, this is November of 2003. This is at Camp Anaconda in Balad, Iraq. There's a big soccer stadium there. I was with Wayne Newton and Chris Isaac. You know Chris Isaac?
Yeah.
Funny story, Chris is the one who got the part in Little Buddha.
I knew we'd come around.
It really rocketed his acting career to the heights. But he's a funny guy, and we were on this tour together with some Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, another great country artist named Neil McCoy, and we were all on this tour. And this was before I was playing music for the troops. I would just volunteer to go on tours and shake hands and take pictures and talk to the troops and have lunch with them and just let them know I appreciated them. And this is at a performance in the soccer stadium where Wayne and Chris and they were all performing, and I got up in between acts and talked to the troops. There were about 6,000 there in that soccer stadium that day. It was huge. And this is very early on. This is before the insurgency really kicked in. It's just about 6 months after the statue had been pulled down in the square. And I actually went about 2 months after that. I went in June of '03 for my first tour. And then I came home and I went to Italy. Then I came home and went to Germany. Then I came home and went to the hospitals, Walter Reed, Bethesda. Then I went back to Iraq. And this is November of '03.
Now, there's a lot more people in this audience watching you play the guitar than the first picture we showed. Lieutenant Dan Band.
Yeah, this is a recent shot. This is just last month. This is actually it's end of January, I think. This is at Fort Huachuca in Arizona, and it's just we were just there in January. And the Lieutenant Dan Band has, this is our second time at Fort Huachuca. The band now has played over 400 some concerts for the military on military bases all over the world. And so we're fairly well known within the military, so we get some big crowds here. That's a lot of people.
It sure is. This next one is a couple of American heroes. Kind of a tough photograph to look at. Did this story have a happy ending?
Yeah, thankfully. Yes, this is at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. And, you know, after September 11th and the deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and our folks started getting hurt, we started losing them. I started raising my hand to do all kinds of different things for different military charities that are out there. I started visiting the hospitals regularly. This is one of my trips to BAMC in San Antonio, and I went into the intensive care unit where a Marine pilot, helicopter pilot, had just got there. And he had crashed his helicopter in Thailand, lost one of his arms and a leg, was severely burned. And he doesn't even know, he didn't know I was there then. But his family asked me if I would go in, and I said, sure. And I didn't actually know this picture was taken until his wife sent it years later, sent it to me. He's doing well. I would visit the hospital regularly, so I remember the first time I saw his face, because I can't see his face there, obviously. And I remember going back about 3 months later. He was in a wheelchair, and I got to meet him, talk to him. Then I went back again. He was on prosthetics. And I went back again, and he was getting ready to retire. He's now a school teacher in Michigan, and he's doing well. Yeah.
You know, I once had the honor of working at the Red Cross, and we went off to Iraq and that sort of thing. And So this next photo, I recognize it looks like an army, it looks like a medical tent of some kind. So I presume this is Iraq or Afghanistan. Where are we here, Gary?
Yes, this is back at Camp Anaconda. As I said, I was there in '03, and I went back in '07 to visit my friend right here, General Robin Rance. Stand up, Robin, because I'm going to introduce you. So I'm visiting Robin. He's a one-star here, and he was running the air wing there, doing combat missions. And so we went to the hospital on the base to visit our wounded at the hospital and see the staff members and just try to bring some light in there. And this is one of the wounded I met in the hospital. Unfortunately, I don't know who that is, and we've tried to figure it out. We've tried to find out, because I've taken so many thousands and thousands of pictures with our troops and everything, and I often look at pictures and wonder if everybody's okay, you know. I see large group shots all the time of me with a gigantic group of folks, and you know, I left the war zone while they stayed, and you often wonder, did everybody come home? Were they all right? And I think he's doing all right. I mean, he was doing pretty well then, and then he was probably getting ready to go home. They were stabilizing him here at Anaconda, and then he was getting ready to go home.
How many trips, Gary, have you made to visit with our men and women in uniform to Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, Iraq, I think 5 times, and Afghanistan maybe 3.
Yeah.
I was just there a little over a year ago with the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Mark Milley, who is now going to be the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. And he's a friend, and I went with him on one of his trips on the last time we hit both Afghanistan and Iraq on that trip.
I'm not sure. I think this next shot is Afghanistan. You're wearing a bulletproof vest, I know that. But it's really kind of, I picked this one out because it's such a joyful shot. You know?
Yeah. So many of these things are documented in the book as I tell the story here. And one of the things that we were able to do after that trip with Wayne, where I was talking to the troops and all that, during that trip, we actually got in a convoy and we went out to a school. The troops wanted us to show us, and remember, this is November of '03. So it's before the insurgency really started to kick in, but it was very, very dangerous at the time. Yet they wanted to take us out to show us a school that they had rebuilt and refurbished for the children of Iraq. So we got in a convoy and we went out, and they showed us this school, and the greatest impression I left with was the children surrounding our troops and just hugging them to death. I mean, jumping on the troops would get down on their hands and knees, and the kids would climb all over them, and it was a fun day to see how the kids were reacting to our soldiers over there. But a lot of that wasn't being reported, you know. It got worse and worse. If you think back to '04, '05, '06, '07, the news was coming back, and it wasn't good. Yet there were all these civil affairs projects going on all the time, and I saw them. So when I got back after that '03 trip, I teamed up with Laura Hillenbrand, who wrote
Unbroken
and Seabiscuit. Great writer. And Laura had a project that she wanted to get Seabiscuit translated into Arabic and send the book over to the troops to read to the kids and give to the kids. And when I got home from Iraq on that second trip, and having visited the school, I went to my children's school, Our Lady of Malibu, in Malibu, little Catholic school, and I showed them pictures of the visit that I made to the school. I showed them pictures of the Iraqi kids, and I said, why don't we collect a bunch of school supplies, put them in boxes, pencils and paper, because when I went to the school, they didn't have any of that stuff. It was just, you'd see 4 kids sitting at a desk and they'd share one little pencil. They didn't have anything. So we collected a bunch of school supplies, boxed them up, and we sent 25 boxes over to the base that I visited, Camp Anaconda, and they took them out and gave them to the kids at the school that I'd visited. And then after that, I started a program called Operation Iraqi Children, where we started collecting school supplies and sending them to the troops, and they would take them out all over the place. And then we teamed up with Mary Eisenhower, who is the granddaughter of General Dwight Eisenhower, and she runs the People to People organization that he started back when he was just leaving the presidency. And we teamed up with them, and they brought us under their wing, and now we had a 501c3. We could take in donations. So we took in thousands of donations. We bought school supplies, boxed them up, and we shipped them all over the place. And once we expanded to Afghanistan and Djibouti and Haiti and all these different places, we made it, instead of Operation Iraqi Children, we made it into Operation International Children. This is 2009. Right around Thanksgiving. A soldier had contacted me about getting some supplies shipped to them, and I said, well, I'll do you one better. I'll bring them with me and bring them out to your school. So here I am on the border between the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. We brought about 500 backpacks full of supplies out there, and I got to hand them over to the kids. It was a great, great day.
Now, this was your other day job, right?
Yeah. So there's a chapter in my book called Perfect Timing, and it's about CSI New York and the timing of CSI New York. I got CSI New York in 2004. That's when I started doing it. And at the time, I was visiting our troops. I was starting to play concerts for them. I was starting to support multiple military charities. Yet I had no resources. I remember trying to just produce the shows myself and put my own money in and do some with the USO, but the USO only pays $50 a day. And I was asking these musicians to play with me and do these things that I wanted to do, and so I had to find ways to pay them, and I came up with a bunch of different ways, including my bank account. And then along came this gift of CSI New York that I had for 9 years, 9 seasons, 197 episodes. And it was perfect because, I made a great deal on it. My agents are here. They made a great deal. And I'm still living off that deal. But it gave me this financial thing that I'd never had as an actor. I'd been up and down and up and down, and that's what actors do. You do a little bit here, it goes up, and then it goes down. But all of a sudden, I was on a show that was lasting year after year after year, and I actually had points in the show, which was a good thing. And so now I had these financial resources that I could do all kinds of cool things with. And so I was supporting multiple military charities, making donations where I could, able to produce the band shows, pay the band members, all of that. And CSI New York, without that, I wouldn't have had those resources that I was able to also use to start the Gary Sinise Foundation.
I know your agent's here tonight. Gary, can we expect you to see you on TV or in film again?
Guys? I don't know. They would actually like me to go back on television, but, I can't say I won't, and I love doing it. But when people ask me if I miss it, and I've been off television now since 2016, primarily and solely focused on this service mission, which is so rewarding and so fulfilling that I feel God just sort of handed me some good health and great family support and a wonderful job here to allow me to do some pretty wonderful things. And you know, I write about the importance of so many of these moments in the book and how they have changed the course of my life and given me great purpose and meaning. And I'll always be happy for CSI New York, especially when those checks come in.
This last photograph is, I just included because North Korea is on a lot of people's mind this week for a lot of good reasons. I think this is a shot of you in Korea, right?
This is up on the DMZ between North and South Korea. So, you know, one of the things I try to talk about beyond the service work, you know, is the importance of the reason for it. And you know, when you go to places like this, you know, you stand on the border between North and South Korea, and you are able to, I don't know, has anybody been there to the DMZ? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about back there. So I can stand here, and North Korean Guard is here. There's only a little cement block about this high, and it's the border line, and it goes all the way down the border. And he can stand on his side, looking right in my face, and I can stand right here and look in his face. The people in the South have been free for all those decades, supported and defended by the United States of America. And this person that I'm staring at right there has absolutely no concept what freedom is at all. He's grown up as a slave to the supreme dictator leader. He has no, and when you look at that person, and seriously, I can stare right into his eyes. You just see this hollow, shallow, empty soul. Just imagine what it must be like to grow up and not be able to say what you want, go where you want, do what you want, worship how you want. Your job is to worship the supreme leader. And so when you go to places like that, Afghanistan, Iraq, places that have been under the thumb of dictatorships, you value your freedom that much more. And it makes you think a lot about your freedom providers and how important and essential they are. And I'll never forget that day of September 11, 2001, when our country was on the ropes. We were down on our knees. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were afraid. Anthrax is floating through the mail, you know, within a month after that event, and we're all thinking, what's going on? We all had that sense of, what do we do? You know, where can I put my energy? And I decided that it was important to make sure that our current active duty defenders deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan in response to that terrible event, unlike what happened to our Vietnam veterans when they came home and had to hide, unlike what happened to them when the country turned its back on them, I wanted to make sure that I did my bit. That's it. Just did my bit to make sure that everybody deploying and serving would know that they're appreciated and supported. And it took, that's it.
We have just a few minutes to take a question or two from our good audience here. If you've got a question, might you raise your hand, and we'd be happy to put a microphone in, and you could ask my friend Gary a question. So we'll start right over here.
Thank you very much. This was amazing. You're an amazing person. And my question to you is, how does an American-loving, conservative great values survive in Malibu.
Keep your head down. That's it. No. You know, we eventually moved. I never went to the beach anyway, so what were we doing there?
We go over here.
Okay. Let me think.
It's
Let me
okay.
think. I'm a biggest fan. Can I take a picture with you?
Yes, come here.
Yes, back here.
Good evening. Thank you for having this opportunity. And I had a husband come home from Vietnam 5 times. It was always interesting. Slept like a baby, though. He said he was doing his job. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity you provided me. I'm a Quilt of Valor quilter. And
What?
Quilt of Valor. We give them award
yes,
to veterans.
yes. Okay.
And 2 of my friends are here with me as part of our group. But I also belong to a group that provides quilts for the Snowball Express. And we have a great time.
Very nice. Very nice.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, please go.
So let me just say what that is. She mentioned something called Snowball Express. Snowball is something that I've supported since 2007. It was started by a couple of veterans who wanted to do something positive for the children of our fallen heroes. So they started bringing the kids to Disneyland back in 07, 08, 06, 07, 08. And then I got involved in 07. We moved it to Dallas because American Airlines was very supportive. And this is hundreds of children of our fallen that we would bring to Disneyland and then Dallas. And now Snowball Express is a program of the Gary Sinise Foundation. And just this last December, we took 1,722 Gold Star family members, over 1,000 of them children, to Disney World. And good stuff.
Right here.
Hi, Gary. I want to follow up on Nancy Reagan's question. Why won't you run for Senate?
What?
Why won't you run for Senate?
You're putting me on the spot. Oh, no, I get too much done the way I'm doing it right now. You know, get too much done. Thank you.
Governor Wilson, right here.
Gary,
Yes, sir.
tell them about Soaring Values and what you...
Sorry.
Soaring Valor?
Yes, sir.
So at the Gary Sinise Foundation, we have several programs. They all kind of started because of some personal thing I was doing, or the program that Governor Wilson is talking about is called Soaring Valor. I have a great long history with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. Has anybody been there to the National World War II? Everyone should go to the National World War II Museum. It's exceptional. Every young student should go to that museum. But as we all know, and we have World War II veterans here today, I think, at least I saw some in the line. We have a World War. So both of the gentlemen here have been a part of our Soaring Valor program at the Gary Sinise Foundation. My Uncle Jack served as a navigator on a B-17 over Europe in World War II. After I got involved with the National World War II Museum, they record our veterans on video and they preserve them in the archive at the museum. And the museum, when you walk through the museum, you can experience the stories of World War II through the eyes of the people that fought that war on video. Those stories are told and preserved and shared with people that go to the museum. My uncle did one of those videos, and when he passed away, I asked them to send me the video, and I watched it, and I was very emotional about it. Loved my Uncle Jack, and very emotional about seeing the video. And so I called the museum and said, you know, what can I do to help the museum through the foundation? And so they asked if we would sponsor one of their historians. So now the Gary Sinise Foundation sponsors one of the historians to go out around the country and record the oral histories of our World War II veterans. I wanted to take it one step further and try to get as many of our World War II veterans down to the museum as possible right now. So with a great relationship with American Airlines, once again, I went to them and said, I got this idea. Let's take World War II veterans to the museum. So we've done multiple trips down to the museum. I've traveled with maybe 600 World War II veterans myself to the National World War II Museum. In 2017, I wanted to add an additional component, and this is great, because it's so important that we're in this window of opportunity with regards to our World War II veterans. And so I thought, let's team them up with high school students. Let's add high school kids onto these trips and pair them up with a World War II veteran. So now we take high school students. Each one of those students gets to travel personally with their travel buddy, a World War II veteran, and spend 3 days traveling to the National World War II Museum through our Soaring Valor program. I encourage you to go to the Gary Sinise Foundation website and look at our YouTube channel, the Soaring Valor program. It's so heartwarming to see these kids. They get an education that they would never get anywhere else by going there. And remember, that event is the most significant event in our history. Never before was freedom on the line so much. I mean, there was two choices, you know, two options. We either win or lose. Thankfully, we won because of these gentlemen here and their fellow service members. But we should all consider the fact, what if we had not won? The world would be a completely and totally different place than it is now. So education about the cost of freedom, what it takes to preserve it, protect it. Again, that's a component of the Gary Sinise Foundation that I feel is very, very important, and we try to keep education as part of what we do. We want people to know not only that they should support the men and women who serve our country, but why they should do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Gary, we have time for one last question. We'll take it from our friends up here in the balcony. Yes, sir.
Hello, Gary. I spent 2.5 tours in Vietnam in the 60s. My 2 brothers also. My 2 daughters were also in the Navy. We have 26 family members my immediate family members that have been in the service. So from the bottom of our hearts, from the Irish family, thank you for your service.
Welcome home. To all our Vietnam veterans out there.
Gary, on behalf of a truly appreciative audience, I just want to say what an honor it is to spend an evening with you. Thank you so, so much for coming.
Thank you, bud. Thank you. Thank you.